I stepped off a red-eye flight from South Korea and walked up to my own porch, still wearing yesterday's clothes. My wife smiled and said, "You don't live here anymore." For a second, I honestly thought she was joking. That's what my brain did to protect itself. After 6 months overseas conference rooms in Busan factory floors, humming all-night hotel breakfasts that tasted like cardboard, I expected a hug, maybe a tired smile, maybe an argument about the thermostat. Not that sentence, not said so lightly. Not with my house glowing warm behind her like it had already chosen a side. Eric stood beside her, beer in hand, leaning against the porch rail like it was a bar counter. He snorted and took a sip. "Guess you should have stayed in Korea, Tom." The porch boards creaked under my shoes. That sound felt louder than it should have, like the house was clearing its throat. The March air cut through my jacket, wet cold, the kind Rockford saves for people who think winter is done. I could smell damp earth from the yard, the faint oil smell from the street, and something else I didn't recognize yet. New paint, maybe. New locks. "You're homeless now," Linda repeated slower this time, as if I hadn't heard her the first time. "We sold the house." I looked past them through the front window. The lamp by the couch was on. Our lamp. The one Linda bought at a garage sale years ago and swore she'd refinish someday. I noticed the lock on the door, bright brushed nickel. That wasn't ours. Ours had scratches from winter's past, keys jammed in too many times with numb fingers. Eric laughed again, a short, sharp sound. "Relax, it's done. Money's already gone." I felt something tighten in my chest, not explode, not crack, just tighten. I set my suitcase down at my feet. The wheels clicked softly against the concrete, a small, ordinary sound that felt strangely important, like proof I was still standing. "What's so funny?" I asked. Neither of them answered right away. Linda tilted her head the way she did when she thought she was being reasonable. The way she used to look at customer service reps before explaining why she deserved a refund. "Eric needed help," she said. "Family helps family. You were gone. You didn't need the house." Eric lifted his beer in a lazy toast. "You travel for work, man. Big projects, overseas. This place was just sitting here." Just sitting here. I almost smiled at that. Almost. I looked down the street and noticed a dark sedan parked a few houses down. Engine off. Someone inside. I didn't know why it caught my eye, maybe the way it didn't belong, maybe the way the driver didn't look away when I glanced over. I filed it away without thinking too hard about it. Linda crossed her arms. "Say something, Tom." I did. I smiled. Slow, steady. The kind of smile you learn when you've sat through too many meetings where people talk over you and think that means you're losing. "The house you sold," I said, "was actually—" Eric scoffed. "Oh, here we go." I stopped myself. Not yet. Sometimes the best thing to do is let people believe the story they've already told themselves. I picked my suitcase back up and stepped closer to the door. Linda shifted, blocking it, without even realizing she'd done it. "You can't go in," she said. I nodded. "I know." That seemed to confuse her more than anger would have. 6 months earlier, I'd been sitting in a conference room overlooking Busan Harbor, listening to a translator explain production delays. The windows were fogged from humidity, and the smell of burnt coffee hung in the air. Linda had called me that morning, voice tight, asking if we could move some money around. "Just for a bit," she'd said. "Eric's in a rough spot." Eric was always in a rough spot. 39 years old and still talking about his next thing. Sports betting apps, crypto groups, a food truck idea that never made it past the logo. I'd helped before, paid off a credit card once, lent him my truck another time. Every favor framed as temporary, every failure explained away. Standing on the porch now, jet-lagged and cold, I realized how carefully they'd rehearsed this moment. The casual cruelty, the laughter, the assumption that I'd yell or beg or fall apart. Instead, I looked at the door again and breathed in. The house smelled different, cleaner, like someone else's detergent. "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked. Eric shrugged. "Motel down by I-90, pretty cheap." Linda sighed. "Don't be dramatic. We'll figure something out." Figure something out. That was always her phrase when something irreversible had already happened. I picked up my suitcase again and stepped back off the porch. The boards creaked one last time, softer now, like the house was watching me leave. As I walked toward the sidewalk, Eric called after me. "Hey, Tom, don't take it personal. It's just business." I stopped and turned around. The porch light threw their shadows long and thin across the steps. That's interesting, I said calmly, because business follows rules. They both stared at me, smiles fading just a little. I nodded once more to myself, then to them. We'll talk soon. I walked down the street without looking back, the sound of my suitcase wheels steady behind me. My chest still felt tight, but underneath it was something else, quiet, focused, awake. Because the house they sold wasn't what they thought it was, and they had no idea how many rules they'd just broken. I didn't go far that night, just a cheap motel off I-90, the kind with buzzing neon, and a front desk that smelled like burnt coffee and lemon cleaner. I rolled my suitcase across the thin carpet, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at my hands like they belonged to someone else. It wasn't just the shock, it was the way the house had looked back at me through the window. Familiar but already changed, like it had learned a new name. I bought that house 18 years earlier, right after my first marriage fell apart. Back then I was 40, newly promoted and tired of renting places that never felt like mine. The house sat on a quiet street in Rockford, just east of the river. White siding, modest yard, nothing fancy, but it was solid. Good bones, like the inspector said. I signed the papers alone, sitting across from a loan officer at Rockford Community Credit Union. She slid the documents across the desk and smiled. Congratulations, Mr. Wheeler. This one's yours. I remember driving there that first night with nothing but a mattress in the back of my truck. I slept on the floor and felt rich doing it. Every creak, every draft, every uneven board, it was all mine. I fixed that place room by room. New drywall in the living room after work, sanded floors on weekends. The smell of sawdust clung to my clothes for years. Menard's receipts piled up in the junk drawer. I hung a small American flag by the porch after my dad passed the way he used to do every summer. When I met Linda, the house was already finished. She moved in 2 years later with her boxes, her coffee mugs, and her son. Eric was 21 then. Quiet at first, polite enough. He stayed in the basement, promised it was temporary. Linda said he just needed time. He'd find his footing. Time passed. Footing never came. By the time Eric was 30, I'd heard every version of the same story. Bad boss, bad luck, bad timing. I'd watched him get excited about things that didn't last and dismiss anything that required patience. I told myself it wasn't my place to judge. He wasn't my kid. I was just the guy his mother married. Still, I tried, helped where I could, advice money once or twice. Every time I said yes, I felt a little more invisible. Linda used to walk through the house with me on Sunday mornings, coffee in hand, saying things like, "This place feels safe," or "I'm glad we have something solid." Once, standing in the kitchen while snow fell outside, she'd leaned into me and said, "No matter what happens, this house is ours." I believed her. At the motel, I lay back on the bed and listened to traffic hum through the walls. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Linda I didn't open. A missed call from Eric. I turned the phone face down. What hurt most wasn't the money. It was realizing they'd made the decision together, talked it through, signed papers, celebrated, all without me. I replayed the porch scene over and over. The new lock, Eric's beer. Linda standing in front of the door like a guard. And that car down the street, the one I couldn't stop thinking about. I sat up and pulled my jacket off. In the pocket was a folded receipt from the airport parking fees dated that morning. Proof I'd been exactly where I said I was. I thought back to the last few months overseas. The late night calls Linda rushed. The way she'd brushed off questions. "Everything's fine." The time she'd said, "You wouldn't understand. You're not here." Maybe she was right. I hadn't been there. I trusted the house to stand in for me, trusted my name on the deed to mean something. I closed my eyes and pictured the living room the way I'd left it. The dent in the floor from when I dropped a toolbox. The thermostat set a little too high because Linda always ran cold. That lamp by the couch. They'd walked through all of that and decided I wouldn't mind. Sometime after midnight, I finally slept. Not deeply, just enough to rest my eyes. I dreamed about standing in the house alone, every room empty, my footsteps echoing like I'd already moved out. When I woke up, the sky outside was pale gray. Morning in Illinois, honest, quiet, and cold. I sat up and felt something settle in my chest, not anger, clarity. I pulled my phone toward me and opened the message Linda had sent. "We didn't want to do it this way. You left us no choice." I read it twice, then I deleted it. Because the house I built wasn't just walls and floors. It was records, signatures, rules, years of careful decisions. And whatever they thought they'd sold, I knew one thing for sure. It wasn't as simple as they believed. The motel coffee tasted like cardboard and regret, but it was hot, and that was enough. I stood by the window watching semis roll past on I-90, their engines rattling the glass. Every truck sounded like it was going somewhere important. I hadn't figured out where I was going yet. I showered, shaved, and put on the same jacket I'd worn through 3 airports the day before. My phone buzzed again. Linda this time. I let it ring. I wasn't ready to hear her version of things. Not yet. Instead, I made one call of my own. VFW Post 497, a gravelly voice answered. This is Ray. Ray, it's Tom Wheeler, I said. You still waking up before the sun? He chuckled. Only people with regrets sleep in, Tom. What's going on? Ray Haskins had retired from the county clerk's office a few years back. We met at the VFW years ago, bonded over bad coffee and worse bingo nights. He knew paperwork the way some men know engines. I told him the short version. Overseas assignment, house sold, power of attorney. Silence on the other end of the line stretched longer than I liked. You give her full authority, Ray asked finally. No, I said. Limited, bills, maintenance, that's it. Well, he said slowly, that's interesting. That word again, interesting. He told me where to go. County recorder's office downtown. What to ask for. Which forms to request. Don't accuse anyone, he said. Just ask questions. Paper doesn't lie. I drove downtown just after 8. The courthouse lot was half full frost, still clinging to the edges of windshields. Inside the building smelled like old paper and floor polish. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The clerk at the counter looked tired but kind. Mid-50s name tag said Janice. I'm looking for property records, I said. Recent transfer. She tapped keys, squinted at her screen, then frowned. That was fast. Fast, I echoed. She didn't answer right away. Just printed a few pages and slid them toward me. Names, dates, signatures. A broker's name I recognized from my childhood Benson Realty. A guy my wife's father used to drink with. My stomach dropped, but my hands stayed steady. I thanked Janice and stepped aside to read. The transfer was rushed. No attorney listed. Electronic signature dated while I was halfway across the Pacific. Ray was right. Paper didn't lie. Back in the car, my phone buzzed again. Eric this time. Relax, it's done. Stop making it weird. I drove back toward the house without responding. When I turned onto my street, I saw it immediately. A black pickup parked in the driveway. Shiny, new, temporary tags still on the back. Eric stood beside it, talking on his phone, grinning. That explained where some of the money went. I didn't stop. I kept driving, heart-steady, thoughts sharp. The picture was forming now, and it wasn't pretty. Back at the motel, I spread the papers across the bed like a bad hand of cards. Dates, names, the limited power of attorney I'd signed years ago buried in my email archive. Clear as day. No authority to sell. No authority to transfer ownership. I logged into my bank account. Transaction history loaded slowly. Then I saw it wire transfers. Large ones. Split between accounts. One of them Eric's. My chest tightened again, but this time it came with heat. They hadn't just sold the house, they treated it like an ATM. I sat back and stared at the ceiling. The hum of the air conditioner filled the room. I thought about all the times I'd said yes. All the times I'd stayed quiet because keeping the peace felt easier than asking hard questions. That part was over. I picked up my phone and saved a new contact, Attorney Real Estate. Ray had already texted me a name. As I lay back down, exhaustion finally caught up to me. But underneath it was something else, certainty. They thought they'd finished this. They hadn't even started it. I went back to the house just after noon, not to confront anyone, not yet. I told myself I just wanted to see it in daylight to confirm it was still standing where I'd left it. But the truth was, I needed to feel the ground under my feet again. The street looked the same. Bare trees, mailboxes leaning a little too far forward, a neighbor down the block raking old leaves like spring hadn't quite earned his trust yet. But the house felt different, like it had already learned how to live without me. Eric's new truck was gone. The driveway was empty except for oil stains I didn't remember making. As I stepped onto the sidewalk, the front door opened. Linda came out first. She had changed clothes, jeans, and a soft sweater, hair pulled back like she was bracing for a hard conversation. Eric followed her phone in hand jaw tight. I knew you'd come back, Linda said. Her voice wasn't angry. It was performative, pitched just loud enough to carry. I noticed two curtains shift across the street. I own the place, I said calmly. Or at least that's what the records still say. Eric scoffed. You always talk like a lawyer now. I didn't answer him. I looked at Linda instead. Who handled the sale? She hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. Enough. Benson, she said. He helped move things along. You know him. I know of him, I replied. Did you have an attorney? She crossed her arms. We didn't need one. Everything was straightforward. Nothing about this was straightforward, I said. Her eyes flashed. You don't get to judge. You weren't here. You chose work over family. There it was, the line she'd been saving. Eric stepped forward. Yeah, you always do that. Big projects, big trips. Then you show up and act like you're better than us. I could feel eyes on us now. A car slowed as it passed. Someone across the street pretended to water frozen grass. I didn't choose work over family, I said. I worked to support this family. Linda's voice cracked, but her words stayed sharp. And while you were gone, I was here, watching my son fall apart. Fall apart, I echoed, or avoid consequences. Eric's face hardened. Careful. I looked at him, really looked at him. Dark circles under his eyes, the kind that come from nights you don't want to remember. What did you spend it on? I asked quietly. None of your business, he snapped. That tells me enough. Linda stepped between us, hands shaking now. I signed what I had to sign. I did what any mother would do. You signed my name, I said. Her breath caught. No, I've seen the records, I continued. The electronic authorization, dated while I was in Busan. That wasn't me. Silence fell heavy and awkward. A neighbor's screen door slammed somewhere down the block. Eric's eyes flicked to Linda. Just for a second. That was all I needed. You forged it, I said, not raising my voice. Or let someone do it for you. Linda's shoulders sagged. I didn't know what else to do. I took a step back, the weight of it settling in. This wasn't just betrayal, it was fraud. Real, documented, undeniable. At that moment, the front door opened again. A woman I didn't recognize stepped out. Mid-40s, polite smile, cardigan buttoned all the way up like armor. She held a folder against her chest. Oh, she said softly. I didn't realize. I'm sorry, are you? Tom, I said. I'm the homeowner. Her smile faltered. I'm Karen. My husband and we bought the house last week. Linda turned pale. Eric muttered something under his breath. Karen looked between us, confused. Is everything okay? I met her eyes. She looked tired, hopeful in the way people do when they think they've finally landed somewhere safe. No, I said gently, but it's not your fault. Linda spun on me. Don't do this here. Do what I asked. Tell the truth. Karen clutched the folder tighter. We were told everything was approved, that you were overseas and agreed to the sale. I nodded. That's what they said. She nodded back, uncertain. Yes. I turned to Linda. You told them I agreed. She didn't answer. I faced Karen again. You need a lawyer, I said, today. Her eyes widened. Are you saying the sale? I'm saying there are serious problems with it. Eric laughed, sharp and nervous. You're bluffing. I shook my head. I don't bluff. The porch felt smaller now, tighter, like it couldn't hold all of this at once. Karen took a step back. I should go inside. Yes, I said. That's probably best. She nodded, disappeared back through the door and closed it gently, like she didn't want to wake something dangerous. Linda's voice dropped to a whisper. You're ruining everything. No, I said. I'm stopping it. She looked at me, then really looked, and for the first time I saw fear. Not for me, for herself. Eric kicked the porch rail. You think you're some kind of hero? No, I said. I think I trusted the wrong people. I turned and walked down the steps. My legs felt heavy, but my mind was clear. Behind me, Linda called my name. I didn't stop. By the time I reached the sidewalk, I knew one thing for certain. This was no longer a private matter. And I wasn't going to handle it quietly anymore. The first real bill arrived before the dust settled. Legal consultation, 2 hours billed in neat blocks of time. I stared at the number longer than I should have. It wasn't the money, it was the confirmation that this was real now. Official. Something you couldn't undo with apologies or excuses. I met my attorney, Frank Delaney, in a narrow office above a print shop downtown. Late 50s gray hair sleeves, rolled up coffee already cold on his desk. He didn't dramatize anything. That's how I knew he was good. You did the right thing coming in early, he said, flipping through the documents. But this won't be quick. I'm not looking for quick, I said. I'm looking for right. He nodded once. Then you're prepared. Prepared didn't mean easy. Within days, Linda emptied the joint checking account. Not much left, but enough to sting. I found out when my debit card declined at a gas station on East State Street. The clerk gave me a sympathetic look like she'd seen this before. I paid cash and drove off, gripping the steering wheel harder than necessary. Then the whispers started. I heard about them at church first. Not directly, never directly, but in the pauses between conversations. A hand on my shoulder that lingered too long. Someone asking if I was doing okay in a voice that already assumed the answer. Linda had posted on Facebook, nothing explicit, just enough to tilt the story her way. Sometimes you give everything to someone and still end up alone. Protecting your children shouldn't make you the villain. People liked it, commented, prayed for her, for Eric. No one asked me anything. I stopped going for a while, not out of shame, out of focus. Ray from the VFW noticed. He showed up at the motel one evening with 2 cups of bad coffee and a paper bag of donuts. You look like hell, he said, settling into the chair without asking. Feel worse, I replied. He told me a story then, about a buddy of his years back who trusted the wrong person with power of attorney before deploying. Lost a truck savings, almost his marriage. Quiet men, Ray said, staring at the wall, they get taken for granted, until they stop being quiet. That stuck with me. The broker Benson vanished for a week. Phone disconnected, office empty. Then an email surfaced forwarded to Frank anonymously. Careless, arrogant. A thread between Benson and Eric discussing moving funds fast and making it look clean. Frank smiled thinly when he read it. This helps. Eric texted me that night. You're blowing this up for nothing. I didn't respond. Some nights alone in that motel room, the doubt crept in anyway. I wondered if I should have just walked away. Let them have the house. Started over somewhere quieter. Somewhere without memories. But every time that thought surfaced, another followed it. If I let this go, I'd be telling myself and everyone watching that what they did was acceptable. That trust was optional. That being calm meant being expendable. So I stayed the course. Paperwork, meetings, waiting rooms. Long silences where my phone didn't ring. I wasn't winning yet, but I wasn't disappearing either. And that was enough to keep going. The courthouse sits on the edge of downtown like it's been watching everything for 100 years and decided not to interfere unless absolutely necessary. Limestone walls, narrow windows, the American flag snapping in the wind out front. I arrived early, coat buttoned up, hands empty. No suitcase this time. No place to be afterward. Inside, the air smelled faintly of floor polish and old paper. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a flat, unforgiving glow. People sat on hard benches with folders on their laps, eyes fixed on nothing in particular. A low murmur floated through the hall, whispers, coughs, the shuffle of boots against tile. Frank Delaney met me by the doors to the hearing room. He looked the same as always, steady, unhurried. You ready? He asked. I've been ready, I said, and I meant it. Linda arrived 10 minutes later with Eric at her side. He wore a jacket that didn't quite fit, hair slicked back like he was playing a part. Linda looked smaller than I remembered, shoulders, tight eyes darting around the room, as if searching for a way out that didn't exist. She saw me and stopped. For a moment, something like regret crossed her face. Then it was gone. We took our seats. The room filled. A few curious onlookers. The buyers, Karen and her husband, sat together holding hands. They looked exhausted. When the judge entered, everyone stood. He was an older man with a calm, measured presence. The kind who didn't need to raise his voice to be heard. The clerk called the case. Frank spoke first. He laid out the facts without flourish, dates, documents, the limited power of attorney, the electronic signature, the absence of proper authorization. He passed copies forward one by one. Linda's attorney shifted in his seat. When it was their turn, Linda stood. Her hands shook as she spoke. I was trying to protect my son, she said. He was in trouble. I didn't think. The judge raised a hand gently. Intent is not the same as authority. Eric leaned forward. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The judge looked at him over his glasses. It never is. Frank presented the email thread. The room went quiet. You could hear someone's phone vibrate and quickly be silenced. Linda's shoulders sagged. She sank back into her chair, face pale. The judge leaned back, fingers steepled. This court finds that the sale was executed without proper legal authority. The transaction is void pending further investigation. Karen let out a breath she'd been holding for weeks. Eric stared at the floor. Linda covered her face with her hands. The judge continued, voice firm but even. Fraud does not become acceptable because it is done for family. Good intentions do not erase harm. No one spoke. When it was over, people filed out slowly like they weren't sure where to go next. Linda didn't look at me. Eric brushed past without a word. Outside, the wind was sharp. The courthouse steps felt colder than the room inside. I stood there for a moment, letting it hit my face, letting everything settle. Frank joined me. This isn't the end, he said, but it's the turning point. I nodded. Across the street, Ray stood near his truck, hands in his pockets. He gave me a small nod. No smile, just recognition. Linda stopped a few steps away. She looked older now, not aged by time but by consequence. I never wanted to hurt you, she said quietly. I know, I replied, but you did. She nodded, eyes wet. I don't know how to fix this. You can, I said. You can only face it. She turned and walked away, shoulders slumped. I stood there until the steps were empty and the flag overhead snapped once more in the wind. For the first time since I'd come home, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. The paperwork took weeks after the hearing, more signatures, more waiting, but the outcome never changed. The sale was officially voided. Karen and her husband were reimbursed. They shook my hand the last time we met, both of them, tired but relieved. I'm sorry this happened to you, Karen said. To all of us. So am I replied, and I meant it. Linda moved out quietly. No goodbye speech. No dramatic ending. Just boxes loaded into a borrowed SUV on a gray Saturday morning. Eric didn't come with her. Last I heard, he was staying with a friend on the edge of town, dealing with problems he could no longer hand off to someone else. The house was empty when I walked back in for the first time alone. It smelled different, clean but unfamiliar. The furniture was gone, but the bones were the same. The scratch on the door frame from when I dragged a dresser upstairs by myself. The slight dip in the floor near the couch. I ran my hand along the wall and felt something loosen in my chest. Ray helped me change the locks. He didn't say much, just worked steady and quiet. Afterward, we sat on the porch with 2 beers and watched the sun dip behind the houses across the street. Funny thing about homes, he said, they don't belong to the loudest voice. They belong to the one who stands their ground. I nodded. That night, I slept in my own bed for the first time in months. No buzzing neon, no traffic noise, just the old house settling around me like it remembered. In the weeks that followed, life found a new rhythm, slower, calmer. I went back to church. Some people avoided my eyes. Others met them with something like respect. I didn't explain myself. The truth had already done enough talking. One afternoon, I stood in the living room and realized something simple and important. A home isn't just a place you own. It's a place that doesn't disappear when someone tries to take it from you. I learned that being calm doesn't mean being weak. Sometimes it means being prepared. Sometimes it means waiting until the right moment to speak. And sometimes justice doesn't need shouting. It just needs patience. If this story reminded you of something you've lived through or something you're living through now, I hope you take a moment to reflect. Maybe even share your own story. You're not alone in it. And if you'd like to hear more stories about quiet strength, hard lessons, and justice done the right way, I'd be honored if you stayed with me for the next one.